Hello. It's been a quiet few months. Late one night last November, my house was firebombed.
A fiery message that's hard to miss.
Police are tonight hunting an arsonist who targeted the home of controversial friendlyjordies YouTube blogger Jordan Shanks. It's the second time the property has been firebombed in a week.
Obviously, we've done some extremely dangerous reporting over the last year, I suppose, of a bunch of extremely powerful people and corporations. There is many people that would want to do that.
No one has the record that he has for doing some hard-hitting journalism, and this is his payday. Someone's trying to kill him.
In what I now know was a premeditated attack that at best was intended to terrify me and at worst was intended to kill me. But the firebombers, they forgot to take one thing into account. I'm very disorganised. The night that happened, I was supposed to be sleeping here. I don't even have smoke alarms, so there's a very good chance that if I was, I could have ended up like the content you're watching right now. Fire. But I wasn't here because that week I was performing my live show in Melbourne and I forgot my keys while I was down there. So there, criminals outwitted. It reminds me of that quote, if we don't know what we're doing, then the enemy certainly can't anticipate our future actions. So I was sleeping somewhere else that night, with the firebombers' mums. But I will admit, the firebombers did succeed in terrifying me, and I've spent the last couple of months doing two things apart from the firebombers' mums. That's hiding and ruminating. This video is a culmination of that rumination. This is an explanation of who could have possibly have done this to such a small, relatively unknown Australian YouTuber. And hey, if that sounds too dry, well, you kids like Knives Out or whatever, stick around. It's a pretty interesting whodunit.
Sorry, we're going to have to film the rest here because the asbestos was getting to us. Just in case you didn't know, I'm Australian. I'm from the great state of New South Wales, home to over 8 million people. And compared to other Australian states, New South Wales is a particularly dirty place. We're the gambling capital of the world, we're the cocaine capital of the world, and not in a cool El Chapo way either. We just have a lot of coke users here, the highest per capita of anywhere actually. For this story, it's important to understand that New South Wales is a state that was created by criminals, and let's be honest, we really have stuck to our roots. During the early stages of our colony, our de facto currency was rum. When an English governor was sent here to attempt to raid it in, we cooed him. Look at him hiding under the bed like he's me. Coward! That's our first political cartoon, by the way. Throughout the 20th century, our police force, political class and criminal underworld had a rich culture of working hand in hand to maximise each other's hustle. And let's be honest, despite numerous inquiries uncovering the extent of corruption and criminal penetration into the institutions of New South Wales, nothing has really shocked the system into radically cleaning up its act. On a completely unrelated note, let me introduce you to the former Deputy Premier of New South Wales, John Barilaro. He's been the topic of many of my past videos. And look, just to be clear, I'm not alleging anything here, and it is too big of a jump to go from beating a cameraman in public to firebombing a house. So obviously I'm not saying he did it, but he did do this, wailed on a cameraman. We'll get to that in a second, but first, you're going to have to endure an extremely bizarre twisting tale. For the new viewers, here's how I made an enemy of basically every powerful person in the state. John Barilaro was the equivalent of a lieutenant governor. He was the Deputy Premier of New South Wales from 2016 to 2021 until he quit, blaming my cyberbullying. How do we get to the point where the most powerful man in the most powerful state in Australia claims that he's decided to resign because of a YouTube beef? It kind of begins with videos I was making about the insane land clearing rates in New South Wales because of the actions of John Barilaro's government. Led by Premier Gladys Berejiklian, we had an increase in land clearing rates by over 1,300%, making Australia the only developed nation having a global deforestation hotspot next to its name, and putting koalas on track for extinction by 2050. So repeatedly, I called Premier Gladys Berejiklian koala killer over this. In mid-2020, I also interviewed the opposition leader Jody McKay, where we discussed the government's appalling record. John Barilaro takes issue with this interview and the nickname and decides to white knight for his boss on radio.
And I've seen some of these banners online or physically where, they call Gladys the koala killer.
Obviously, I found that very amusing and did a video that included this impression.
Oh, what the f***? She's never even personally killed one koala. The one she backed over was an accident, bruh. I'm like, what'd you call a koala killer? What the f***'s the body? I don't see no koala. Where's the f***ing DNA evidence, bruh?
Still gets loved to this day, one of the classics. Then one morning, we got calls from sources in New South Wales Parliament claiming that John Barilaro was very shitty at that video, huffing and puffing, claiming that the impression was racist. I remember this happening because I couldn't believe how stupid the claim was. We were all thinking, no way is he going to publicly say something about this. And then this article came out. YouTube comedian in racist low blow towards Premier. He responded by planting a story in the newspaper that alleged because I did an impression of him, I was racist against Italians and the migrant success story. This is the same paper that posted this cartoon a few months later. Gladys, I'm gonna make you an offer you can't refuse. So inaccurate. There is no way he'd be that tactful in his threat. This is what it actually read. Yeah, I'm threatening you, dickhead. I don't give a f*** that this is an open line. We couldn't believe it. I think the team and I were in Goldman Subway when we first read it. We were pissing ourselves. John Barilaro was a man who built a career railing against political correctness, and now he was in an article taking issue with me doing an impression of him, and specifically annoyed by the inclusion of the word bruz. That's Australian slang for brother/cousin, usually used by utter legends. The most ironic part of that article is that my family are migrants from a place that less than 100 years ago was part of Italy. John didn't even bother checking that before throwing out his sob story. So we thought, a whiny, sensitive, fat Italian man, who also happens to be the most powerful man in the state. Content gold, HBO understood that 20 years ago. So obviously we came up with a bunch of stupid nicknames and animations about him, including the classic Super Barilaro, braz. It's a me, Barilaro. Do you like these koalas? Woohoo! We've approved the countless development and logging proposals in koala habitat, starving them, fast-forwarding their extinction clock, and didn't make any effort at all in an attempt to save their populations. All with the help of my good friend, yay! By mutilating Labour's Native Vegetation Act, I thought I'd increase land clearing by 45%. But what's this? Woohoo! I increased it by 1,300%. Mamma mia! When I discovered the Brumbies were destroying Kosciuszko National Park, bringing a bunch of endangered species to the brink of extinction, I was gonna authorize a cull, but then I realized I could make $10,000 in donations by allowing them to destroy the park. Woohoo! Everything in my life was going great until, what's this? Branch. Oh! Someone hurt my feelings. We also made some merch. Anyway, this was all super auspicious because, I swear to God, earlier in the year, unrelated to this new beef, we realised John Barilaro had this palatial multi-million-dollar estate that he Airbnb'd as a side hustle to his other gig, being the leader of a state. We thought, surely this is the dumbest thing you could do, right? Like, especially since the other half of the time, it's not Airbnb, that's where he lives. So we thought, wouldn't it be good if we film a video on the history of all the shitty things he's done, but film it at that Airbnb? So that's where one of our biggest videos, Bruz, comes from, which was released in September of 2020, which I've got to say, it had a very good twist, because as you've probably gathered, or haven't because you're that dumb, I'm filming at your estate, and I want you to be the first to know that I in both your guest houses. Oh, Stitch, we tracked the video. It's coming from inside the house. You wouldn't expect this from me, but I highly recommend this video. Links in the description. Obviously, the video caused quite a stir. Front page news, in fact. Unbeknownst to us at the time, and it was later revealed by New South Wales Parliament after that video came out, John was demanding the police conduct a bug sweep of the property. Something that would cost the taxpayers 10 grand. Despite the fact we paid almost that much to stay at the property. Just imagine how stupid and entitled it is to be Deputy Premier and lease one of your primary residences out to anyone. I never considered doing this before, but say a property developer wants a favour, they could very easily get material to blackmail you. I have an unlicensed casino in my basement. Please don't tell the authorities. Also, if you wrong me, you end up in this secret room. There you go, some unreleased footage from Bruz. More on that at the end of the video, so stay tuned. Anyway, after the release of Bruz, John became increasingly agitated by the videos we were making. One in particular seemed to really bother the Barilaro family. It was called The Italian Job. That was released in November of 2020. It was an expose that detailed how John and his dad, before politics, became the directors of their local Italian club. They then racked up a bunch of unsecured debt and as directors sold the clubhouse property for pennies to a company they directed and owned shares in, thus becoming the landlords. They then jacked up the rent against themselves, forcing the Italian club to go defunct and leaving them with the property as directors of the club they had already sold to themselves for a bargain. Later they sold that property, formerly owned by the Italian community, to developers, making a $700,000 profit. Wow, now that's a migrant success story. And if that's all too complex, full video is linked in the description. But in short, it was just heaps dodge. In another video, I called Barilaro up and attempted to ask him about allegations surrounding him and extramarital affairs. Turns out, John's intimate relationships would eventually come under scrutiny in a corruption hearing concerning his boss's intimate relationships, but that's a story for another day. I didn't know this at the time, but these videos caused John's office to contact the New South Wales Police Force just days after their release, specifically the Counter-Terrorism and Special Tactics Command. New South Wales Police then set up a dedicated strike force to put surveillance on us, a YouTube channel. That's right, in Australia our terror police go after YouTube channels. It was called Strike Force Wyargin. What the is Wyargin? Why couldn't they have just called it what they were targeting? Strike Force Big Cock. I told you this was a bizarre story, but it gets stranger. At the same time this is happening, John's also contacting defamation lawyers, who we have also confirmed were at some point in contact with the strike force surveilling us. The defamation lawyers draft up this absolutely schizophrenic letter detailing all of John's grievances with the videos I made, including that I called him a greasy little scrotum. He needed to clear the record on that one. Let everyone know that's not true. This letter gets sent to me just a few days before Christmas of 2020, and because unlike you lucky Americans, we don't have your First Amendment in this country, someone can very easily take you to court for calling them a stupid fat idiot, which was something else that the lawyers whinged about in this letter. The first few months of 2021 go by and they were pretty quiet, unbeknownst to us that a police terror unit is surveilling us on behalf of a guy that we exposed and made fun of. But we know we have to respond to this nutty letter at some point, so we thought, what better place than a university forum that Barilaro is speaking at? We pay him a visit. He tells us to f*** off. This is all detailed in the video Bruz Eternal, which goes through all of the contents of the legal threat we got. The video has now been taken off of YouTube, I think because we advertised the greasy little scrotum key rings we were selling. You can still watch that video on our website though, links in the description. Obviously, this exchange jolted John and his greedy defo lawyers into action, and they filed in the federal court, leaking this fact to the press before we even knew. I had to find out in the press. What am I, a murder victim? Jesus, it's like the Nightcrawler's coming before the cops. Oh, and side note, for his lawyers, he got attorneys who at the time were representing alleged war criminals and a barrister who was just prohibited by court from acting for a client, another one of Australia's most colourful politicians, because of a conflict of interest. Only the best. Around this time, I'm told by my neighbours that while I was away on tour, the police came and visited my house. I thought, that's quite bizarre, so I get my lawyer Mark to call up the police, who at first deny that there was any visit at all. And only after Mark quotes a time and date does he get transferred to the Counter-Terrorism and Special Tactics Command, specifically the Fixated Persons Unit, a unit set up in the wake of a deadly siege in the centre of Sydney. Basically, this unit's MO is to stop lone wolf terrorists. People like, I don't know, Joker or Travis Bickle from Taxi Driver. That's literally me. The police officer there informs Mark that he had a warrant for my arrest and he was at my house to arrest me, but I wasn't there. So the police seemingly had time to think, walked back from the brink and were apparently awaiting legal advice. Anyway, back to the lawsuit. Because we hadn't been served yet, we decided to have a little fun and do what is perhaps the greatest Friendly Jordies gag in history, because we hadn't been handed the documents. We are on the elevator up to Mark O'Brien Legal to ask to be served because it's been a week exactly, and the press knows all about what I've done wrong. But I don't. Let's find out.
I serve you here with the originating application, the statement of claim and the agreement steps.
Oh, thanks so much. And oh no. So we've been served. And what they gave us, in my honest opinion, is another whiny crock of shit that was not only riddled with delusional and paranoid readings of silly jokes, but had straight out factual errors, like mistaking their own client John Barilaro for being a federal politician instead of a state politician. Absolute geniuses. For Americans, that's like lawyers acting for DeSantis or some other governor thinking he's president. Just embarrassingly stupid mistakes for a normal person, let alone lawyers. Not much happens for about a day. Then on the 4th of June 2021, my producer Christo was walking back from uni. He was already planning on meeting our lawyer Mark that day, so he had the documents on him. Yet on the way back, he bumps into Barilaro himself, attempted to hand back the documents to tell him about the mistake, being listed as a federal politician. Barilaro basically took no notice. Then, only a few hours later...
No, I'm allowed to film it though. No, I'm allowed to film it.
No, you're not, because you're under arrest.
Could you film
I'm allowed
this?
to film
Could
it.
you film this, Mum?
You can film it, that's okay. But you're not allowed to, okay?
Yeah. I'm not allowed to. No, Mum, you can take my... No, you can take my phone. No, take my phone. Take my phone. Don't do
What the f***? Yeah, they're giving away evidence and try to run away with it. Yeah? Don't run off with evidence. Okay? Who are you doing this? You're going to win. Jesus Christ. I'm calling. Where is it? Film this.
I am.
Make
What
sure
the
you don't film it. This is bizarre. This is not Australia. Yeah, it's Mark Davis.
Have you got the number? You hurt a 51-year-old woman. You knocked me over.
I tripped over.
You killed my dog.
I tripped
who's
over.
Old.
Okay.
No, you did not.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
pushed your way. You pushed
No,
me
no,
down.
I tripped over.
You
That's
assaulted
whatever it was.
me. You assaulted
Okay.
me. You
No, I
just
didn't.
assaulted me. I've got
did.
witnesses.
We told you to hand over the phone.
I have got witnesses.
You handed it to her. I tripped over you.
You pushed
That's what
me
happened.
down in my own home.
No, I didn't.
You
I
absolutely.
That's all.
So it seems I've made enemies of politicians, lawyers, and now the police. Christo was arrested by the Terror Police, specifically the Fixated Persons Unit, charged with 4 counts of stalking and intimidation. So we're now facing criminal charges and a defamation suit. We raise $1 million in legal funds, which we're still using to this day. Thank you so much. Weeks after the arrest, New South Wales has plunged into lockdown, and I know from how much time I had to spend on it, instead of focusing on his job as Deputy Premier during a crisis, Barilaro is spending a significant amount of his time preparing his defamation suit against a YouTuber. Even Logan Paul had the decency to back out of that. Barilaro even goes on television to spread lies about his involvement with the Fixated Persons Unit, making the insane denial that he had anything to do with the arrest.
Did you ask for the Fixated Persons Investigation Unit to be involved in the arrest of Jordan Shanks's employee, Christo Lanka?
Absolutely not. Rubbish again. Rubbish. You know, they want to pitch it a particular way to get community support from their social community. They use whatever means to misrepresent the truth. And again, I'll leave that up to the police. They'll deal with all of this in due course.
Right, but just to clarify, so you had no role in that particular unit being
But Tom,
involved
I've already
in
said, I've actually made it clear, Tom. I've said absolutely not. And again, for you to even be asking that question is an indictment on your level of journalism.
I then release a video that criticises the police's response and, shockingly, I know you're not going to believe this, proves that the guy that complained to the police had something to do with the police being involved in Christo's arrest. Always the one you least suspect. Because of this video, the police asked the court to find me in criminal contempt and launch an application for a suppression order. That's right, the police try to get another criminal prosecution on top of the charges against Christo. Thankfully, it doesn't go so well for the cops. They end up withdrawing the application and paying both Christo and my legal costs of over $20,000. But Christo's criminal charges still hang over him, and my defo case is still ongoing. During this time, Barilaro also decided to publicly announce his intention to resign from politics, basically saying, I forced him to resign.
The defamation case definitely playing a big part of this. I don't know how many of you can endure what I've endured on online. I feel for young men and women, young boys and girls that get bullied on social media. I feel for them because as someone that's been around the traps, a 49-year-old man that's played it rough and tough, I've got to tell you that it's made it very difficult for me.
As all this is going on, in order to understand how this bizarre and overtly political prosecution came about, Christo's lawyers start issuing subpoenas to Barilaro's staffers. His chief of staff, Siobhan Hamblin, seems to rid herself of certain documents and becomes completely uncontactable by the court or lawyers. It's a pretty serious thing to do, ignoring a court, so the magistrate floats issuing a possible arrest warrant. Until just in time, her lawyers make contact and she's eventually brought in and cross-examined by Christo's barrister Emmanuel Kirkasharian. During the cross-examination, Hamblin admits that she got rid of documents from her possession, documents pertaining to Christo's arrest, after she'd already been subpoenaed. We never got those documents, and Hamblin never got any punishment for blatantly hiding from a subpoena. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, during this time, I'm also fighting a defamation case brought by Barilaro. I put in an application to have it heard by a jury, something pretty common sense that you'd think you'd automatically be entitled to, right? Well, Barilaro opposed the jury, wanting the case to be heard by a judge only, with his legal team's reasoning being it would be too hard to organise with COVID. Ironically, John was in charge of the COVID roadmap to ending the lockdown in New South Wales, and on the same day his legal team were opposing a jury on those grounds, John was publicly flagging his intention to open up New South Wales ASAP. I lost my application for a jury despite that, and was ordered to pay costs to John Barilaro's lawyers for daring to even ask. Now, ready to hear the most mind-bogglingly illogical challenge that we faced during the defo case. One of the things that John was suing me for was saying that he had lied to Parliament. Yet because of parliamentary privilege, basically English law from the 17th century designed to protect politicians' freedom of speech from the King of England getting in your face, in Australia, nothing said in Parliament can be examined by a court. For Americans, Parliament is like Congress. That means I'm unable to present a transcript in which we believe John lied to Parliament in order to mount my defence. John brings a suit against me and then hides behind special parliamentary protections only afforded to him. So my legal team launches an application to strike out that claim, opposed again by Barilaro, who fights tooth and nail to keep that claim in and keep his special protections that prevent his own words from being examined in court. And guess what? We lose. The judge rules that it would be more unfair to deprive Barilaro of the right to vindicate his reputation that Mr. Shanks attacked than to make it impossible for me to defend myself. So I'm basically stuck in court with no jury of my peers, a judge that doesn't know the first thing about social media, and I can say that because at one point he was asking for someone to explain to him what tagging is. I'm also stuck with the claim that I can't defend myself from, so it's already an automatic loss for me because my opponent, the man who brought the lawsuit, is protected by a British law from the 17th century. Oh yeah, and all the whilst I'm being surveilled by a dedicated strike force on behalf of John Barilaro. I hadn't even been firebombed yet someone thought I hadn't suffered enough. So I entered court-ordered mediation with Barilaro with this knowledge, and we come to a deal. I say sorry for hurting your feelings, pay the cost to his lawyers for the jury and parliamentary privilege strikeout applications that I had already had to pay to them because I lost those, and I stopped selling merch that depicts Barilaro as a scrotum, and in exchange, he drops the defo case against me. In the end, it was a phenomenal deal for me considering the circumstances because Barilaro didn't get a cent from me and I only had to pay what I would have even if I stayed in the suit. That is pretty unheard of in defamation mediation. Defamation cases are pretty much rigged in Australia. For a defendant to come out with not even 1 cent of damages to be paid to the complainant, that's like winning the Running Man. It doesn't happen. It's almost as if Barilaro didn't want me mounting my other defences. You know, those that weren't stopped by a 17th century shield. It was like he had me on the hook, and then he threw me back out to sea. Yeah, Barilaro wasn't just suing me, he was also suing Google for daring to host my videos on YouTube, and Google and him don't come to a deal, so the case is still set to go ahead in March of 2022. In late December of 2021, I released a video detailing that I had found an Ashley Madison account linked to John Barilaro's email address and personal details. You know the website that had the slogan, "Life is short, have an affair"? It was hacked a few years ago. I swear to God, as with the rest of this saga, you couldn't make this up. The username on the account was John Loves to Lick. The video has been taken down by YouTube in Australia, but American subs probably still could be able to see it. It's the vid with the lick emoji as the title. It's very funny. I wish I could go more into it now. Moving on. It's now early 2022, Christo's criminal trial is fast approaching, and so is John's defamation trial. Yet very, very strangely, just a bit over a week before John's defamation trial is set to begin, police drop the charges against Christo and pay his legal costs. Again, almost like the police were working to benefit John, so he could have a bargaining chip in his defo case. Then, another strange thing happens, perhaps the most tragic of them all. Just days before Google are set to go against John, they drop all their legal defences, leaving John with the legal equivalent of a layup. He now couldn't lose, and the trial would just be a question of how much money he'd get. This was completely illogical on Google's part, and to me it was very, very suspicious. There was no logical, strategic reason for them to drop their defences, so this results in John's lawyers being able to spend the entire trial getting away with whatever bullshit they like, repeatedly smearing me as a racist, misunderstanding jokes, misrepresenting the timeline of the videos to make it seem like John didn't react first, dramatically overstating to the point that it was comical how much ad rev YouTube videos made. And worst of all, John wasn't asked point blank any difficult questions. And I'm not there to defend myself or give a true account of what actually happened. Most importantly for John, he got away with this narrative. I was driven out of politics by this horrible racist, much more powerful than me YouTube man, and Google made so much money from his awful videos. Yes, one of the richest corporations really needed a few $1,000s Australian in ad rev. That's why my videos were kept up, pure commercial interest. I'm single-handedly keeping Google afloat, guys. That's the meat of the case. The reason John would be awarded damages centres around the claim that he was forced to resign because of my videos and the fact that Google kept them up. Keep that in mind. After a few days, the trial finishes. On the 6th of June 2022, the judgment comes out and awards John over $700,000 in damages. And not only that, the judge refers me to the registrar for consideration of possible criminal contempt charges, mostly because of the video I made that detailed the John Loves to Lick Ashley Madison account. That was apparently criminally intimidating to John. But John getting a strike force on us wasn't. So throughout the course of this ordeal, John got away with his chief of staff deliberately ignoring subpoenas, having a police unit surveil us, using police to bring vexatious charges to use as a bargaining chip in a separate civil trial, opposing a jury, hiding behind parliamentary privilege. My grade crime has stayed the same throughout this ordeal, and it just might be why I was firebombed, which is being an annoying pest to a lot of very powerful people in Australia. So John had his big win. But one thing he didn't tell the court, what his lawyers didn't tell Justice Rares, or us for that matter, was that during the trial, John had already had a few very, very lucrative career moves lined right up. In fact, better paid than his job as Deputy Premier. Barely a week after the judgment came out, the New South Wales government announced that it was appointing John Barilaro to be New South Wales Trade Commissioner in New York, a $500,000 a year taxpayer-funded job that John himself created while he was in office. This wasn't even the worst worst thing Barilaro had done that year, but created by far the largest controversy of his career. A parliamentary inquiry was set up to figure exactly how John got that job. And I can't really go into everything here, but suffice to say, it was pretty damning. One of his ex-staffers alleged that as early as 2019, John had said that that big New York job was the job for when I get the out of this place. New South Wales Parliament then questioned John about the timing of his resignation, with John stating under oath that he had only decided to resign days before he announced it. New South Wales Parliament then presented an affidavit from his defamation case against me that contradicted that evidence.
In that meeting, you were yet to decide you were resigning at that point.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
As I said, if the events of Friday didn't occur, I would have stayed on for who knows how long.
This is your outline of evidence in your court case, and can you just read out the highlighted?
Yep. I have therefore made a decision to retire from politics. I do not want to face another election.
And what's the date on that, down the bottom?
The 24th of September.
After this appearance at Parliament, John pulled out of all future appearances, citing mental health issues. Mind you, this is after him begging to tell his side of the story.
But the upper house won't call me to the hearing because they don't want to hear the truth. So give me the opportunity in a hearing, in real life time, live, for everybody to get the same information at the same time, and we can go through this process.
I'm planning on maybe doing a dive into that later in the year if you guys want, but this whole matter is still under investigation by New South Wales Parliament and was referred to the Independent Commission Against Corruption. John was also under investigation by the police. I promise to explain this to you. Clearly, John wasn't doing too well with all the attention his new job got him, because when cameramen went to film him one night regarding this scandal, this happened. It was a long and winding road to get to that point, but we got there. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we found our firebomber. Dodgy cameraman Matt Costello. So bitter about Barilaro's epic beatdown, he had to prove himself by taking down the man that courts claim took down Barilaro. For the Yanks watching, that was a joke. The cameraman's gear was broken and he was quite injured from the exchange and couldn't work for a while, so we're now using our legal fund to pay for a legal action against John Barilaro on behalf of the cameraman. Oh, and just a quick update. Days ago, John's charges were dropped on the grounds of mental health. Quite strangely, the prosecutor barely objected. We'll soon be releasing a video of the strange circumstances surrounding the original delay in police charging Barilaro and the conduct of the prosecution in the case, ultimately resulting in his charges being dropped. Suffice to say, some pretty interesting and concerning information is set to come out. But you'd think this saga would end there, right? No. In the 6 months after John had quit politics, he actually worked another job before landing the Trade Commissioner role. I don't know how he managed to do it, but this one is even more scandalous. Executive Director of large Sydney property development company Coronation Property Co. In August last year, we released an investigation into this developer, which detailed never before published links between them and one of the most violent crime organisations in all of Australian history, the Alameddine crime family, who are in no way suspects in the firebombing. No, not them. I'm sure they all have very credible alibis. We revealed that Andy DeHaas, the now former Secretary and Director of the construction wing of Coronation, MN Builders, he was charged with kidnapping in 2009 after an extremely violent incident where a man was chased down, kidnapped, held against his will and bashed by a group of bikies, one of whom is now on trial for murder. These charges were only dropped after the victim seemingly disappeared. We also have revealed photos of Nahas with high-ranking members of the Alameddine crime family. All that info can be found in articles on our website or the full video. And John Barilaro, after being essentially the leader of the state, went to work for these people. I told you New South Wales was rotten to the core. See how one stupid beef about an accent and the word bruz snowballed into a massive saga that made me the enemy of just about every elite in the state. Police, politicians, organised crime. I really should have chosen one to be friends with so I'd have a little bit of cover, but Oh yeah, also, there was a really loud, violent cop that arrested Christo and assaulted his mum and girlfriend. We did a video that detailed some pretty strange behaviour of his in a courtroom, linked in the description. But we're not done. You know how earlier I said New South Wales is the gambling capital of the world? Yeah. The gambling lobby came after me with a criminal prosecution. How fun. Essentially, my producer Christo interviewed a terminally ill whistleblower, a man called Troy Stoles. Troy used to work for the gambling lobby, an entity called Clubs New South Wales. It was Troy's job to make sure venues were complying with anti-money laundering regulations. Spoiler alert, Arnold Schwarzenegger survives Running Man. Sorry, that was the wrong spoiler. These venues weren't complying, and it's very easy to launder money through poker machines in New South Wales. Check out this video we did with Boy about it. So Troy leaked to federal parliament the fact that 95% of Clubs New South Wales venues weren't complying with money laundering regulations. Clubs New South Wales sued him, drained him of nearly $1 million in seemingly never-ending lawsuits. Troy had to sell his house. He then developed terminal cancer. So Christo interviewed him about the ordeal. Apparently that interview was criminally intimidating, enough for Clubs New South Wales to bring a private prosecution against Troy and I. So now I've made even more enemies, the gambling lobby and anyone that would use them to launder money. Sorry, after filming this there was a few updates on this front. Clubs New South Wales fired their CEO, and then days later John Barilaro tried to become Clubs New South Wales' new CEO. And Clubs New South Wales rejected him. By the way, this came out on the same day John was saying in court that he was too mentally ill to face his assault charges, but well enough to run Clubs New South Wales, one of the most scrutinised jobs in the country right now. Now you see, all these people are kind of just one group. They're the Avengers of dodgy c***s. And perhaps a less hilarious update, just a few days ago the charges against Troy were dropped and Troy's civil suits were settled with Clubs New South Wales. And so were mine. This is breaking news. My criminal charge has been dropped. So well done me. And Troy, I suppose. The lawyers, they did their bit, but I think, the big player was definitely me. More on this soon. This video is going on for a real long time. We also did some shit about cocaine, the opposition leader, $100 million security contracts in Papua New Guinea. Can't be go over that though, watch it in your own time. What else? Allegations that the former defence minister went all eyes wide shut in Parliament House prayer room. Numerous journalists and politicians publicly admitting their desire to have me thrown in jail. The 7th richest man in Australia threatening to sue me. Numerous other property developers and dodgy bears. I have a longer enemies list than Richard Nixon. So despite having my suspicions, I'm still not completely sure as to who done it. But enough of listing enemies, it's now time for my friends list. First of all, sorry to my neighbours and landlord, and future apology to whoever finds my corpse. It's going to be messy, I'm not going down without a fight. Big thank you to Boy, Pyrocynical, Moist Critical, Isaac Butterfield, Michael West, Kevin Rudd, Chris Mintz, Michael Daly, Peter Crenau, my lawyers, and the people that house me in the meantime. And most importantly, you the viewer. No, actually just my patrons. You guys really helped us in our darkest time and kept the business running. Everything we make from Patreon goes right back to paying the staff and making production possible, so you literally kept us afloat. But for the rest of you, chuck us a few bucks. You get early access to videos, extra content, and the more we have, the bigger we get, the bigger the truth bombs, the bigger the firebombs that get hurled back in retaliation. Oh, and a massive thank you to everyone's favourite Russian Australian YouTuber, I Did a Thing, for kitting out my new security. Check out that video. There are too many people to thank for their support, so sorry if I missed you, but I'd be here all day if I went through all of them. But as you can clearly see from this video, I really need to learn to shut the fuck up sometimes. But we all know that's not gonna happen. The reason I was off for so long, by the way, I wasn't off for patrons, they still got videos every week, was because I thought we'd stop to assess the threat level and get some more information, but it's been months and I still know about as much about the firebombing as the day it happened, so I got tired of waiting and not making videos for you guys. Plus I have some considerable gambling problems that I need to get money for. Just another little Australian joke. Tune in next week because even though we haven't been posting, we've been working, and I think you're in for a treat if you enjoy the rug being swept from under the feet of fat politicians. On that note, I'd also like to officially announce my new stand-up show for the year. That's right, Brews. Definitely not Bruz, didn't say that. Coming to a city near you if you live in Australia, hopefully. But hey, you never know. If enough of you high flyers in LA, that's right, Shreveport, Louisiana, subscribe, I just might catch a plane there and make the groundbreaking cultural observation that Burger King is called Hungry Jack's here. What up with that? Anyway, get your tickets now from friendlyjordies.com and see Brews live on stage before the court takes it down or a gang takes me out. To end the video though, I thought I'd enlist the help of you fellow TikTokers, yeah? Get this going on TikTok. At this point, I'm not sure the police can solve it alone, so make the firebombing like one of those murders you guys love to live through vicariously.
I don't think we'll ever know who did this. Everyone in town's a suspect.
Well, I couldn't possibly solve this mystery. Can you?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. I mean, it's my job, right?
And to get you started, I'll give you a clue. Exclusive, definitely real CCTV footage from the night of the fire. Like and subscribe, big vid's coming.
What's cold one?
Please share and comment below. Comment.
Hey Jordan, man, it's Chad. Yeah, listen, bro, I had a bit too much to drink the other night, and I was kind of pissed off about you stealing my underwear. So, I took it upon myself just to head over your place, and, I didn't know it was a fire. I just thought it'd make a funny sound and some pretty colors, but yeah, it turns out it did a lot of damage. So I'm sorry, man, but if anything, I think you deserved it. All right, have a good one, mate. Call me.